Hope you had a good week. We're moving on in Yecheskel. Okay, this year is dedicated to Rachelea Bas Rav Chaim Tzvi, as always. This week in Yecheskel, what we're going to find is something very different than last week. The theme of last week's shir, okay, in Perek Yud Chet, was our possibility of spiritual renewal. That no matter what we've done, there are always open possibilities. And Siyata Dishvaya. In this Perek, he's opening up a whole other chapter, introducing us to a different idea. In the previous Perek, the picture that comes to your eyes is that there's never a reason to say the story's ended, there's no hope. In this Perek, what he's saying, there is a place for mourning. The place for mourning is when you don't examine possibilities and let yourself spiral downward and downward. So, to use Rambam's words, he says that when a person is misguided through, again, their own heart, so what will Hashem do? If the person is worthy enough, He'll stop them in their tracks. So an example of that, suppose you have a person who, I'll give you a true example. I don't know who the person is, so it's not just I'm not saying the name of the person. In honesty, I don't know who the person is. But recently, during the present financial difficult situation, there was a wealthy man who gives a lot of charity, a lot of charity, who went to Rav Shteiman. He said, Rebbe, I lost so much money. And why? I give so much charity. Why are my losses what they are? Now, this person is not a person for whom we have to go collecting door to door. His great losses still means he has much in the way of financial assets, but he lost a lot. So Shteiman looked him in the eye and said, were you really giving a tenth? Were you really giving a tenth? And the man, who's an honest person, says, no, I was giving a lot, but it wasn't a tenth. So Rav Shteiman said, so what do you expect? You owe Hashem money. If you owed a person money, you would understand you have to pay them. So I want to tell you something. In this world, a lot of people who don't give charity properly are not going to have this happen. They won't lose their money. And if they did, they wouldn't have enough insight to discuss it with Rav Shteiman. So this man has merit. So Hashem stopped him in his tracks so he could put himself back on track, so he could reflect more on what lasts forever and what's transient. He could do tshuva. Okay, now what the end of this story, of course, is that the man understood that Hashem took back his debt, and he, of course, began from that point on trying slowly to work out what he owes in back charity, and certainly in the present and in the future giving a full tenth. Okay, but let's say the story didn't have a good end. So the person lost the money, didn't go to Rav Shteiman, and doesn't even think about the spiritual implications of it, even though, let's say, it's a frum person. They talk about market factors, they talk about bad advice from the broker, they talk about the real estate market. They say, look, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. So in this world they've lost. But since Hashem gave them the opportunity to think more deeply, they'll lose in the other world as well. So a person could end up, and this is what's worth mourning, losing in both worlds, meaning Hashem stops you in your tracks 1,000,000 times, and you just keep on going as though nothing happened. We have a family friend who was telling us his life story, an older man, and he said he did tshuva in his late 60s. He said up until that point, whenever he was at a crisis point, he consistently chose wrong. He knew he was making choices, but he chose wrong. He had the opportunity to stay in yeshiva, or to go to Israel for Hachshara. He knew what right was and he knew what wrong was. He was learning the first-class yeshiva with a first-class mashgiach. I don't want to divulge the person's identity in any way, but a mashgiach whose name has, as an inspiring person, is a name that you've all heard. So he came to Israel for Hachshava. He decided that agricultural life, kibbutz life, isn't for him. He had different opportunities of what to do next. One of them was to go to Hebrew University, and another was to learn a profession outside the university framework and to live a from life. He went to university. He could have studied many things. He studied philosophy. He could have gotten a teaching job in the university itself after he had his doctorate, but he chose to teach in one of the what they call alternative branch of Judaism's theological seminary. And on until he finally got a grip on himself. So